The galaxy heard Vel'Sara's declaration and chose sides within hours. Some systems pledged support. Others reinforced Imperial loyalty. Most stayed silent, waiting to see who would survive before committing to revolution or extinction. 6 months passed. The rebellion grew to 300 ships, and then the Empire responded with something far worse than anyone expected. If you're just joining us, this is part 2 of an epic saga. The link to part 1 is in the description and pinned comment. Start there to see how a forgotten mechanic and a fugitive queen became the galaxy's most dangerous alliance. Liam watched the response data flow across tactical displays in the war room of their flagship. 300 ships sounded impressive until you compared it to the Imperial Navy's 18,000. 7 controlled systems meant nothing against the Empire's 412. They were a spark trying to ignite a forest made of stone. But sparks had a way of finding dry timber if you knew where to look. Vel'Sara entered the war room with Kes and Rin behind her. The children had grown in 6 months. Kes now stood almost to Liam's shoulder, lean and focused like a blade being sharpened. Rin, younger but no less intense, carried a datapad everywhere, absorbing tactical theory like a sponge soaking up water. "The Imperial Court has responded," Vel'Sara said. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd just read their own death warrant. "Officially." Liam turned from the displays. "And? They've declared me and my children enemies of the state, traitors to the crown. They've stripped our bloodline of all titles, lands, and protections." She paused. "They've also placed a collective bounty of 50 million credits on our heads. Alive only. They want a public execution." Kes's jaw tightened. Rin moved closer to their mother. Both children had learned to process fear by turning it into focus. Vel'Sara had taught them that. Liam had reinforced it. 50 million, Liam said quietly. "That's 10 times what they offered before. They're making a statement. Show the galaxy what happens when you challenge Imperial authority. Good. Let them spend their money. Every credit they waste on bounties is a credit not spent on ships or weapons." Admiral Torvin, a grizzled Thalorian who'd defected from the Imperial Navy 3 months prior, stepped forward. He was old guard, traditional. He'd joined because Vel'Sara represented legitimate succession, but he still looked at Liam like a useful but unpredictable weapon. "Commander Cross, with respect, we should be concerned about infiltration. 50 million credits will buy a lot of treachery. Our fleet is composed of refugees, defectors, and mercenaries. Loyalty is expensive. Betrayal is profitable." "Then we make loyalty more valuable than credits," Liam said. "Every person on these ships chose to be here. They're not conscripts. They're believers. We remind them why they believe. Pretty words don't stop assassins." "No, but good security protocols do. I want full biometric screening on every ship, random rotation of guard assignments, compartmentalized intelligence. No one person knows enough to sell us out completely." Torvin nodded slowly. "You've done this before. Counterintelligence operations. I've survived them. There's a difference." Vel'Sara pulled up a star chart. "The Imperial response won't just be bounties and assassins. They'll send a fleet, probably within the week. We need to choose our ground carefully. If we fight in open space, we lose. They have numbers and firepower." "Then we don't fight in open space," Liam said. "We fight in the Razorwind Nebula." Every officer in the room went silent. The Razorwind Nebula was a navigation nightmare. Dense particle clouds that scrambled sensors, gravity wells that appeared and disappeared randomly, radiation storms that could fry unshielded electronics in seconds. It was considered a death trap for any fleet larger than a dozen ships. "That's suicide," Torvin said flatly. "For them, yes. For us, it's an equalizer. They can't use superior numbers if they can't coordinate. They can't target what they can't see. We know the nebula. We've been running supply routes through it for 2 months. They don't. We've lost 4 ships in those runs. And they'll lose 40. Acceptable trade." Vel'Sara studied the map. Liam could see her making calculations. Political, strategic, personal. "If we retreat into the nebula, it looks like we're running. It undermines the message of strength we just broadcast. Or it looks like we're smart enough not to die stupidly. We're not trying to prove we can outpunch the Empire in a straight fight. We're proving we can't be killed. There's a difference. Kes spoke up suddenly. What if we don't just hide in the nebula? What if we use it as a base to strike their supply lines? All eyes turned to the child. Kes met their gazes without flinching. Royal training combined with 6 months of accelerated tactical education had created something unusual. A teenager with the strategic instincts of a veteran officer. Explain, Liam said. The Empire has to supply any fleet they send. Fuel, ammunition, food, repair materials. Those supplies come through predictable routes. If we're in the nebula, we're positioned perfectly to hit their logistics. They have to choose between hunting us in a death trap or defending their supply convoys. Either way, we control the engagement. Vel'Sara looked at her child with mixed pride and heartbreak. Kes should have been learning art and philosophy and how to negotiate trade agreements. Instead, they were planning guerrilla warfare. The Empire had stolen their childhood and replaced it with military necessity. It's a sound strategy, Torvin admitted grudgingly. Risky, but sound. Then we vote, Vel'Sara said. This fleet operates on consensus among the command staff, all in favor of retreating to the Razorwind Nebula and initiating hit-and-run operations against Imperial supply lines. Every hand went up, even Torvin's, though he looked like it physically pained him to vote for retreat. Unanimous, Vel'Sara said. Prepare the fleet. We move in 6 hours. Dismissed. The officers filed out. Kes and Rin lingered. Liam caught Vel'Sara's eye. She nodded slightly. He knelt down to the children's level. You both know what's coming, he said quietly. This isn't practice anymore. The Empire will send ships designed to kill. People will die. Maybe people we know. Maybe people we care about. We understand, Kes said. Rin nodded silently. No, you don't. Not really. Understanding it intellectually and living through it are different things. When the shooting starts, it's going to be loud and terrifying and chaotic. You're going to want to do something, help somehow, but the best thing you can do is stay safe, stay alive. Because if something happens to you two, your mother will burn the galaxy down to avenge you, and I'll help her do it. What if something happens to you? Rin asked. The child's voice was small but steady. Liam smiled slightly. Then you take care of your mother, and each other. And you remember that family isn't about blood or genetics or royal titles. It's about choosing to stand together when the galaxy tries to tear you apart. Kes reached out and hugged him suddenly. Rin followed. Liam held them both. These children who weren't his by birth, but had become his by choice. Vel'Sara watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. 6 hours later, the fleet entered the Razorwind Nebula. The transition was like diving into a storm. Sensors immediately began screaming warnings. Navigation became guesswork supported by prayer, but they had charts, paths that their scouts had mapped through trial and error, and the loss of 4 ships that would never come home. They set up a base deep in the nebula's heart, a relatively stable pocket of space surrounded by sensor-disrupting particle clouds. Defensive positions were established, patrol routes assigned. Everyone waited for the Empire's response. It came 4 days later. The Imperial fleet that arrived at the nebula's edge numbered 200 ships. Cruisers, destroyers, fighter carriers, and support vessels. They were led by the INS Absolute Sovereignty, a dreadnought-class vessel that could crack a planet's crust with sustained bombardment. Commanding that fleet was Grand Admiral Sethis Cole, a Thalorian of the highest military caste. He'd won 17 major engagements without a single defeat. His reputation was built on overwhelming force, applied with surgical precision. He was also the one who'd ordered the execution of Vel'Sara's husband 4 years ago, the political purge that had started this entire nightmare. Liam watched the Imperial fleet's deployment through long-range sensors. He's not rushing in. Smart. Sethis doesn't make mistakes, Vel'Sara said. Her voice carried old hatred, old pain. He'll probe our defenses, test our responses, learn our patterns before committing to a full assault. Then we don't give him patterns to learn. We hit him now, before he's ready. With what? He has 200 ships. We have 300, but half of ours are converted freighters and salvaged wrecks. His smallest destroyer outguns our flagship. Which is why we don't fight ship to ship. We fight smart. Liam pulled up tactical maps. His fleet is staging here, at the nebula's edge. They're running active sensors, trying to map safe passages. That means they're broadcasting their position constantly. We send small strike teams, fast ships. They slip through the particle clouds, hit the sensor ships, and fade before reinforcements arrive. Death by 1,000 cuts. Exactly. We can't win a battle. But we can make this so expensive and frustrating that political pressure back home forces them to withdraw or negotiate. Over the next 3 weeks, Liam's strategy played out. Small teams of 2 or 3 ships would emerge from the nebula's depths, strike an isolated Imperial vessel, and vanish before coordinated response could arrive. Sensor ships were priority targets, then supply transports, then any ship that strayed too far from the main fleet. The Empire lost 37 ships in those 3 weeks. Not destroyed, mostly. Disabled, crippled, forced to withdraw for repairs. But the psychological impact was worse than the material losses. The mighty Imperial Navy was being carved apart by ghosts they couldn't catch or predict. Grand Admiral Sethis Cole's reputation began to suffer. Military analysts across the galaxy questioned his tactics. Political enemies in the Imperial court whispered about incompetence. The man who'd never lost an engagement was being humiliated by refugees in jury-rigged ships, and that made him dangerous in a new way. Desperate. The attack came on the 24th day, not against the fleet, against the refugee stations they'd been protecting. 3 systems simultaneously. Imperial Marines descended on civilian populations with one mission: find Vel'Sara's supporters, make examples. The reports came in over the course of an hour. Thousands dead, tens of thousands arrested, entire stations burned, children executed in public squares to send a message. The war room fell silent as the casualty numbers climbed. Vel'Sara stood frozen, watching her people die because they'd believed in her, because she'd offered them hope and the Empire had answered with extermination. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I did this. I gave them a target painted on their backs." Liam's face was stone. "No. Sethis did this. The Empire did this. They're the ones pulling triggers. They're the ones choosing to murder civilians because they can't beat us in actual combat. We have to respond. If we don't, we look weak. We lose credibility. We will respond, but not by rushing into a trap. Sethis wants us angry, wants us to make mistakes. We stay disciplined." Admiral Torvin entered the war room. His expression was strange, guilty. "Commander Cross, Your Majesty, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Liam's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. "One of our captains has requested emergency communication. Captain Yaris of the Swift Meridian. He claims to have intelligence about the Imperial fleet's next move. Critical intelligence, but he'll only share it in person. He's requesting immediate shuttle clearance to the flagship." Every alarm in Liam's head started screaming. "Negative. All intelligence can be transmitted through encrypted channels. No exceptions." "He says it's too sensitive for transmission. Risk of interception. Then he can wait until we're less occupied with not dying." "Commander, with respect, Captain Yaris has been loyal for 4 months. His crew has participated in 7 successful raids. He's earned some trust." Liam turned to face Torvan directly. "In my experience, the best time to betray someone is right after you've earned their trust. Tell Yaris to transmit his intelligence or keep it to himself." Torvan's expression flickered, just for a moment, but Liam caught it, a micro-expression of frustration, of calculation, of something wrong. "Admiral Torvan," Vel'Sara said slowly, "is there something you'd like to tell us?" Torvan's hand moved toward his weapon, not fast, but intentional. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but 50 million credits is more than loyalty can withstand, especially when your cause is doomed anyway." He never completed the draw. Liam moved faster than human reflexes should allow. Enhanced combat neural wiring activated. Time seemed to slow. He crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat, disarmed Torvan with a strike that shattered 3 fingers, followed with an elbow to the temple that dropped the Admiral like a puppet with cut strings. Security flooded the room seconds later, but Liam was already accessing Torvan's personal comm device, encrypted files, communications with Imperial agents, a detailed plan to sabotage the flagship's engines and transmit their location to Sethis Cole's fleet. Vel'Sara read over his shoulder. Her face went pale. How long has he been compromised? At least 6 weeks, maybe longer. Liam continued scrolling. He's not alone. There's a network, at least 7 other officers, all feeding intelligence to the Empire, all waiting for the signal to strike. We trusted him. He was Imperial Navy, decorated, respected, which made him the perfect plant. Seth has probably had him in reserve for years, just waiting for a situation like this where he'd be valuable. Do we have names? Liam pulled up a list. 7 officers, including 2 ship captains and a senior tactical advisor. People who'd been in every strategy meeting, every planning session. The Empire had known their every move for weeks. Round them up, Vel'Sara ordered. Quietly, no announcements, no drama. We do this clean. The arrests happened over the next 2 hours. Surgical, precise. Every traitor isolated and secured before they could communicate or activate whatever sabotage they'd prepared. But the damage was already done. The Empire knew where they were, knew their defensive positions, knew their patrol routes and weak points. They're coming, Liam said. Sethis won't waste this. He'll hit us with everything. Then we evacuate, scatter the fleet, meet at the backup rally point. We don't have time. Look. Liam pointed at the sensors. Imperial ships were already moving, not probing, not cautious. A full assault formation pushing into the nebula on vectors that avoided every natural hazard. They'd been fed perfect navigation data by their spies. 200 Imperial ships versus 300 defenders. But the defenders were trapped in their own base. No room to maneuver, no time to scatter. Sethis had engineered the perfect killing ground. He's going to crush us, Vel'Sara said quietly. Probably, Liam agreed, unless we give him a bigger problem to deal with. What kind of problem? Liam pulled up a map of the nebula. Deep in its core, beyond even their base, was a region they'd never explored. Too dangerous, too unstable. The sensors showed massive gravity anomalies, possible stellar remnants, maybe even a collapsed star. We go deeper, into the places even we won't go. Force Sethis to follow us into hell itself. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's a chance, which is more than we have sitting here. Vel'Sara looked at the map, at the impossible choice between certain death and probable death. Then she looked at Kess and Rin, standing in the corner of the war room, watching everything with eyes too old for their faces. Prepare the fleet, she said. We go deeper. The evacuation was chaos. 300 ships trying to move in formation through sensor-disrupting clouds, while an Imperial fleet closed from behind. They lost 17 ships in the first 10 minutes, not to enemy fire, to navigation errors, to random gravity wells, to the nebula itself turning them into debris. Liam piloted the flagship personally. His enhanced reflexes and tactical processing gave him an edge that kept them alive through passages that should have been impossible. Behind them, the Imperial fleet followed. Sethis Cole was committed. He'd finally cornered his prey and he wasn't letting go. They pushed deeper, past the mapped zones, into regions where the particle density was so thick that viewports showed nothing but swirling color. Sensors were useless. Navigation was instinct. Ships collided. Some exploded. Others simply vanished into the chaos. But something strange happened. The Imperial fleet started losing ships faster than they were. Sethis' larger vessels couldn't maneuver as quickly, couldn't adapt as fast. What had been an advantage in open space became a liability in the nebula's depths. After 3 hours of nightmare navigation, they emerged into something impossible. A pocket of clear space, perfectly calm. At its center hung a structure, ancient, alien, not Thalorian, not human, not any species anyone recognized. It was a ring, enormous, thousands of kilometers in diameter, made of material that absorbed sensor scans like light hitting a black hole. And it was active, pulsing with energy that made every instrument on every ship scream warnings. What is that? Vel'Sara breathed. Salvation or damnation, Liam said. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. The Imperial fleet emerged from the nebula behind them, battered, reduced, but still overwhelming in numbers. Sethis Cole's voice came over open channels. Vel'Sara, you have nowhere left to run. Surrender yourself and your children. I'll grant your fleet safe passage. You have my word as an Imperial officer. Vel'Sara activated her own comms. Your word means nothing, Sethis. You murdered my husband under a flag of truce. You slaughtered civilians to bait me. Your honor died with your conscience. Then die with dignity at least. Don't drag your children into the void with you. Kes stepped forward, took the comm from their mother. Grand Admiral Sethis Cole, this is Crown Heir Kes of the Third Line. You murdered my father. You hunted my family. You turned us into refugees. But you made one mistake. You taught us that the Empire values power over justice, so we learned to be powerful. And when we reclaim the throne, the first name on our justice list will be yours. The child's voice was steady, cold, absolutely certain. It was the voice of someone who'd been forged in fire and had come out as steel. Sethis's response was to open fire. The Imperial fleet unleashed everything: missiles, energy weapons, kinetic projectiles. The attack lit up the dark like a new sun being born. But something responded to the violence. The ancient ring structure activated fully. Energy surged through its framework. Space itself seemed to ripple, and suddenly every ship, both Imperial and Rebel, lost power simultaneously. Engines died, weapons went offline, life support flickered. 300+ ships hung dead in space, floating in the shadow of something ancient and utterly beyond their understanding. In the silence, Liam heard Rin whisper, "It's beautiful." The child was right. The ring was beautiful, terrifying, alien, and it was looking at them. Not with eyes, with intention, with awareness. A voice filled every ship's communication system, not through technology, through something else. It spoke in a language no one knew, but everyone understood. Children of the younger races, why do you bring war to this sacred place? Every person on every ship felt the weight of that question, the judgment behind it. Vel'Sara stood, straightened, spoke with royal authority. We bring war because we were given no choice. We fight for survival, for family, for the right to exist without tyranny. And you? The presence turned its attention to the Imperial fleet. Why do you pursue? Sethis Cole's voice came back, defiant. We restore order. We punish rebellion. We maintain the structure that keeps chaos at bay. Structure built on corpses. Order enforced by fear. You are not preserving civilization. You are preserving control. The presence went silent for a moment. When it spoke again, its tone had shifted, sadder, more tired. We built this place as a refuge, a sanctuary from the wars that consumed our people. We thought if we removed ourselves from the cycle of violence, we might finally know peace. We were wrong. There is no escape, only the choice of what you fight for. Power returned to the ships. Slowly, selectively, rebel vessels came back online. Imperial ships stayed dark. We gift you time, the presence said. Time to choose what you will become. Use it wisely, or waste it. The choice has always been yours. Then the presence faded. The ring went dormant, and the rebel fleet found themselves alone with a disabled Imperial armada. Liam looked at Vel'Sara. We could destroy them. Right now. End Sethis. Cripple the Imperial fleet. Change the entire war in one moment. Or we could show them mercy. Prove we're different than they are. Mercy gets you killed. Maybe. But slaughter makes you a monster. She activated ship-wide comms. All ships, stand down. Do not fire. We are not executioners. Your Majesty, with respect, this is a tactical error, one of her captains argued. Noted. Order stands. Liam understood what she was doing. This wasn't about tactics. It was about identity, about proving that her claim to the throne was based on something other than superior firepower. It was a gamble. A huge one. But it worked. Over the next hour, as Imperial ships slowly regained power, something unexpected happened. 17 Imperial vessels broke formation, turned off their weapons, requested asylum with the rebel fleet. Sailors who'd watched their own Admiral order civilian massacres, who'd seen the ancient presence judge their cause and find it wanting, who'd been given a chance to choose and chose differently. Sethis Cole's remaining ships limped away, battered, humiliated, reduced. The Grand Admiral, who'd never lost an engagement, had been defeated not by superior force, but by moral clarity delivered by something ancient and incomprehensible. Back on the flagship, Vel'Sara collapsed into a chair, the adrenaline and terror of the last 6 hours finally catching up. "We survived," she said. "I don't know how, but we survived." "We did more than survive," Liam said. "We proved something, to the galaxy, to ourselves. We're not just running anymore. We're building something that can stand against empires." Kes and Rin approached their mother. Both children looked exhausted, traumatized, but also stronger somehow, tempered by what they'd witnessed. "Mother," Kes said quietly, "when I spoke to Sethis, when I told him we'd bring him to justice, I meant it. Is that wrong?" Vel'Sara pulled both children close. "No, justice isn't wrong. But remember this moment. Remember we could have killed them and chose not to. That choice is what separates rulers from tyrants. Power must be tempered by mercy, strength balanced by compassion. Never forget that." "I won't," Kes promised. Liam watched the family hold each other and felt something unexpected. Hope. Real hope. Maybe they wouldn't win this war. Maybe the Empire would eventually crush them. But they'd proven something important. That resistance was possible. That standing for something mattered. That family, chosen or born, was worth fighting for. The fleet regrouped over the next days. They'd lost 63 ships total, nearly 2,000 people dead. But they'd gained 17 Imperial vessels and 600 defectors. They'd found an ancient sanctuary, and they'd proven they could face the Empire's best and survive. But Liam knew this was just the beginning. Sethis would return, stronger, more prepared, more vicious. The Empire didn't forgive humiliation. They answered it with extermination. The real war was just starting. And somewhere in the Imperial capital, in rooms filled with power and paranoia, decisions were being made that would shake the galaxy. Because the Ghost Commander and the Fugitive Queen had become more than annoyances. They'd become threats. Real threats. The kind that empires didn't negotiate with. They destroyed them. Completely. Absolutely. No matter the cost. And the Empire was about to show exactly what that meant.